So Henderson, Pickford, Trafford as the goalkeepers. Dan Burn, Gahey, Reece James, Konza, Livramento, O'Reilly, Kwanzaa, Spence and Stones as the defenders. Elliot Anderson, Jude Bellingham, Eze, Henderson, Mainu, Declan Rice and Rodgers as the midfielders. And then Gordon, Kane, Madueke, Rashford, Saka, Toney and Watkins as the attackers.
This England team, people, Thomas Tuchel might just be a CI for Germany. Thomas Tuchel might be an informant for Germany and we just don't know it. He might have been sent into the England squad to cause absolute havoc. Thomas Tuchel has named Jarell Quansah, John Stones and Dan Burn, and he left out Harry Maguire, Lewis Hall and Luke Shaw. Now listen, two of these three defenders I'm not particularly fond of. Luke Shaw and Harry Maguire. People know this. I've made this public. But Luke Shaw has started every game for Manchester United this season in the Premier League. He's one game away from having started every single game this season. Harry Maguire has been arguably one of United's best defenders this season. And whenever he plays for England, he always turns up. In fact, whenever England go to a penalty shootout, and this is where people actually found out about his ability to take great pens, he puts them top bins. He puts them top bins. The midfield, I don't really have an issue with in terms of the players that have been picked. But Jordan Henderson in big 2026. In fact, I'm the one editing this video. So, Aaron, put in the Roy Keane clip right now.
I think it is a huge distraction. Clearly, Jordan's not fit. I don't think he should be involved. I've heard now people say, well, they want him around the place. For what? What does he do? Card tricks? Does he have a sing-song? Does he does quizzes in the evenings? What does he do?
That clip is from 2021. Here we are. 5 years later. Nothing's changed. Meanwhile, Adam Wharton is left at home. Morgan Gibbs-White, one of my favourite players in the Premier League, by the way, who put in an absolute masterclass of a save your team from relegation campaign. One of the best I have seen. And the expectations from England fans is completely valid. Because they're looking at Thomas Tuchel now and they're going, if Southgate can get to a World Cup semi-final, if Southgate can get to a Euros final, Tuchel, you cannot do anything less. In other words, you have to get to either a final and win it, or it's going to be seen as a failure. Because I don't even think a semi-final in this World Cup is going to be acceptable for England fans. So Thomas Tuchel, whether we like it or not, is going to be under huge pressure from the word go at this World Cup. From the moment they have the first kickoff, expectations are going to be extremely high. And now he has to.
You know what? I think there's been a lot of conversation about who's been left out, but I look at that squad, you were always going to leave people out. There was always going to be controversies. I quite like that squad. We are going to a tournament where you're going to have to play every 3 or 4 days in a hot climate and do a lot of travelling. And there's a lot of players there who are going to be capable of dealing with that, in the sense that not just age, but also flexibility. You know, Dan Burn can play centre-back and left-back. Jed Spence can play right-back and left-back. Elliot Anderson, Jude Bellingham, Declan Rice, Mainu, Morgan Rodgers. They can play multiple midfield positions. I mean, look, Jordan Henderson for me is a waste of time, but obviously it's an experience thing. I would have took Scott or Garner or Wharton. I would have took Lewis Hall over Jed Spence, but Jed Spence can play left-back and right-back. Ivan Toney going is interesting, but I wouldn't have took Calvert-Lewin or Solanke anyway, and Watkins is already going. And, you know, I think the biggest two for me are Foden and Palmer. You know, the quality of Phil Foden and Cole Palmer is like very, very high. You know, people moaning about the Maguires and the Whartons and the Lewis Halls. You know, we're talking about Phil Foden and Cole Palmer here. They are like superstar players. No one's really talking about it because they're not going because they've not played well. So I think Thomas Tuchel has had quite a, you know, big backlash over the last 24 hours. But having slept on it and looked at the squad, You're never going to make everybody happy anyway. From a squad perspective, we know our best 11 is Kane and Saka and Gordon or Rashford and Bellingham and Rodgers and Rice and Anderson and Konza and Gahey and O'Reilly and Reece James and Pickford. You know, the problems only come if we lose players through injury. And then you're moving into the controversial squad picks. These are squad players people are moaning about. Like, our best 11 is our best 11. So, look, of course, maybe you wanted to take Harry Maguire, maybe you wanted to take Lewis Hall, maybe you wanted to take Adam Wharton, and that doesn't change. But I think some of the reaction and backlash to Thomas Tuchel is a little bit over the top. He's absolutely right to pick the team that he wants to pick, and he's certainly done that.
England's World Cup squad has just been announced, and I can confirm football is not coming home. Thomas Tuchel has now made his official selection ahead of the 2026 World Cup, which will be the first tournament that he is taking charge of England. There are some absolutely massive names that have not made the list, so let's go through the team. Starting off with the goalkeepers, we've got Jordan Pickford, England's number 1, and then Dean Henderson and James Trafford. No problems, you take 3 keepers, no stress. Moving on to the defence, where we have some big omissions. So we've got Reece James, we've got Livramento, 2 fullbacks, O'Reilly, Jed Spence, another 2 fullbacks, Konsa, Gahey, Stones, Quansah and Dan Burn. Now for me, Reece James 100%, Livramento, Nico O'Reilly, Konsa, Gahey, John Stones, no problem. How on earth you have gone and taken Jed Spence, who has had an absolute horror time at Tottenham Hotspur? Apparently he's been rewarded for his Spurs and England form. Ahead of Miles Lewis-Skelly, ahead of Lewis Hall, who is an unbelievable fullback. Now the argument is probably that Jed Spence can play left back and right back, but we've got a bunch of players there. We've got Reece James, we've got Tino Livramento, we've got O'Reilly, we have so many fullbacks. We didn't need to go and take Jed Spence ahead of Miles Lewis-Skelly, who can help out in midfield, or ahead of a Lewis Hall. For me, it doesn't make sense. On top of that, you've taken Dan Burn and Quansah over Harry Maguire. Somebody that has played every single league game, I believe, for Manchester United this season, and has been one of their most consistent players. On top of that, has been one of England's most consistent players over the past couple of years, and is a massive set-piece threat. I don't get it. Apparently, Tuchel doesn't like Maguire because of his inability to turn, and he's too clunky. But then you go and take Dan Burn, who turns around like he's an 18-ton truck. It doesn't make sense. That's just the defence. Moving on to the midfield, we've got Declan Rice, Elliot Anderson, Jordan Henderson, Kobbie Mainoo, Jude Bellingham, Morgan Rogers, and Ebere Eze. For me, a lot of those names make perfect sense, you know? Jordan Henderson. I mean, apparently he's coming for the experience and what he's done in the past. It's a new era. If you want experienced names, we've got Harry Kane, we've got Declan Rice, we've got Saka, we've got a bunch of these players that have played a majority of these last couple of tournaments. There is no world where Jordan Henderson is better than Adam Wharton. How Phil Foden isn't in there? Well, I mean, cool, Phil Foden's had an absolute disaster season. There's no reason Phil Foden shouldn't be in there over Jordan Henderson. We need game changers off the bench. Morgan Gibbs-White has had an absolutely incredible campaign. Over nearly 19 goals and assists this year for Nottingham Forest. What? Single-handedly took them out of relegation. Unbelievable. He doesn't get a sniff. And then we move on to the attackers, where you've got Bukayo Saka, Noni Madueke, Marcus Rashford, Anthony Gordon, Ivan Toney, Harry Kane, Ollie Watkins. Again, a majority of these names make sense. For me, I understand why Noni Madueke is in there. Played deputy to Saka for a title-winning team. I understand. I think if you want to go and get Cole Palmer in there, I would 100% do it. 100%. Listen, we need game changers. The World Cup is about moments. It's not necessarily about form. It's not necessarily about who's done well overall this season. It's about who does well for England when they put that jersey on. Cole Palmer was incredible at the Euros. And I understand if you want to use that logic for Cole Palmer, then a lot of those other players, it justifies them as well. But for me, you need somebody special, all right? And when we're tied and it's a tough game in the knockouts, you go and bring Cole Palmer off that bench. That's just my personal input, man. I mean, you've got to bring in Ivan Toney. Again, a great player a couple of years ago. He's stat padding out in Saudi Arabia. Again, how you bring Ivan Toney, you don't go and bring some of the other players. It doesn't make sense to me. You guys let me know your thoughts down below. But that's the England World Cup squad for 2026. Is football coming home? Comment down below.
I look at the selections Thomas Tuchel has made. I think some of them can be reasoned. I think some of them are absolutely crazy. But one thing is for sure, 2 things are for certain. There has never been more pressure than there is now. If Thomas Tuchel does not win the World Cup with the players he's selected, which most of the nation probably finds egregious, I think Thomas Tuchel is set for the biggest meltdown we have ever seen from any country ever. It's similar to what I was saying about Neymar and Ancelotti. If you don't take Neymar, the entire footballing world, let alone Brazil, will literally be on your back from the word go that tournament starts, a microscope over you in every selection you make. And the moment you exit that tournament, all the noise will be about well, this is because you didn't take Neymar. I think to a certain extent, because obviously Palmer is not Neymar, Foden is not Neymar, Hall is not Neymar, Maguire is not Neymar, but in their own respective way, the second England exit this World Cup, Thomas Tuchel will be set to receive the biggest barrage of insults and concerns and complaints and demands potentially for him to walk from the job. And personally, I didn't think England were going to win the World Cup beforehand. I certainly don't.